Look, if my correspondence is not about the energy mess we're in, and you've already heard us talk about that tonight, and the idiocy of this National Energy Minister relying on the vagaries of the weather, wind and solar, to service our energy needs, if that isn't a source of anger, then the anger multiplies when people write to me about what they perceive to be the untruths told to them about coronavirus. And their concerns are many. Get vaccinated, they said, and all will be well. So they got vaccinated. Then they were told, get vaccinated again, and all will be well. Then they were told, oh, get a booster, and all will be well. And so it went on. Then we were told that the testings were free to find out if you had it. Just imagine how sick you must be if you have to be tested to find out if you're sick. But we were then told the tests were free when nothing is free. Then we were told the vaccinations were free. Then the boosters were free. Pharmaceutical companies just thought all their Christmases had come at once. But we have never been told how much taxpayers paid to these pharmaceutical companies. Remember how we were told, listen to the science, but only the science that suited the government narrative. I mentioned way back in March 2020, so we could never say we weren't warned, that 800 medical professionals from US universities wrote together, quote, mandatory quarantine, regional lockdowns and travel bans are difficult to implement, can undermine public trust, have large societal costs, and importantly, disproportionately affect the most vulnerable segments in our community. 2020. In January last year, a peer-reviewed article in the European Journal of Clinical Investigations by researchers from Stanford University showed that net harms exceeded net gains. And that at the time, almost half of the deaths in the UK were from non-COVID causes, such as cancelled operations, people dying from lockdown-induced causes like healthcare delays, and the economic and social consequences of the coronavirus response. At the time, I interviewed Professor Gigi Foster, a professor within the School of Economics at the University of New South Wales, a brave lady, saying the things that weren't fashionable, except that she at least had been very well educated and is a professor. The Economic Society of Australia in 2019 named her the Young Economist of the Year for her extensive research interests in behavioural economics. She wrote then that lockdowns have enormous human cost and that governments had plenty of time to realise that and factor those costs into their decision-making, but they didn't. Well, now Professor Gigi Foster is the co-author of a recently released book, The Great COVID Panic: What Happened, Why, and What to Do Next. Professor Foster joins me. Gigi, thank you for your time. Many people writing to me would say that what to do next is call a royal commission into what happened and why it happened and what costs have been the consequences. I mean, businesses have gone broke, haven't they? Children have lost years of schooling. The mental costs have been appalling, and the social damage done by these persistent messages of fear are such that we'll be feeling the consequences, won't we, for many years to come?
Absolutely, and that's exactly what myself and Sanjeev Sablock investigate in our newest book, which is about the cost of lockdowns. It's called Do Lockdowns and Border Closures Serve the Greater Good? That's what we were told at the time, but as you said, the government actually has never defended those policies using anything like what we used to think was what they had to do to be responsible stewards of a society, which is to do a cost-benefit analysis, a policy evaluation in terms of human welfare. Do these policies actually work? And so we do this analysis and find that the costs of the lockdowns and border closures in Australia had costs that were roughly 68 times the possible benefits they could have had. And of course, we have to estimate those benefits based on what happened in countries that didn't have such restrictions. And there it was not COVID Armageddon, although you would, perhaps believe so if you've been listening to the mainstream airwaves in 2020 and 2021, when Sweden was the world's punching bag. Yeah. But in fact, there actually weren't that many deaths. And now in Australia, if you look at our COVID deaths, we've had more than 10,000. And that was about the number that I had estimated, even in August 2020, we might have suffered if we hadn't had the lockdowns.